Hey everybody, this is Jordan back again with another episode of In a Snap, and this is where I give you really quick, simple, easy photography advice to kind of help further your journey into photography. And so for this episode, I'm going to basically do a roundup of the last two episodes. So for the first episode of the In a Snap segment, I talked about aperture and what that means for a camera. And then in the previous episode, I talked about ISO and shutter speed. So if you haven't listened to those yet, go back and listen to those, because the stuff I'm going to talk about in this episode relates very much so to the past two episodes. So let's go and get started. Basically, when you're talking about ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, those 3 points of a triangle really, impact what your image is going to look like and what settings you need to put those at to help achieve the photo that you're trying to make. So before I start off, I have made a couple cheat sheets for you that can be found on the PictureMonk site. So if you want to check out the exposure triangle cheat sheet, which is kind of explaining ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, you can go to picturemonk.com/exposure cheat sheet, and that'll take you to a page where you can download the free cheat sheet there. And for this episode, I'm going to kind of go over a camera settings cheat sheet that I made, and it basically just details out certain situations and what you might want to put for the settings on the camera. So for that cheat sheet, you can actually go to picturemonk.com/settings cheat sheet. And there you again can download a free cheat sheet for you. So let's say you're trying to get like a sports image. What you really want to do is you want to have the fastest shutter speed you can possibly get to freeze the action, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, which most of the time you are trying to freeze action. So a good way to start that off with is to get like a really high shutter speed. So on the cheat sheet, I actually put 1/800th of a second. Now I said before that I like to try to get around 1/1000th of a second, but 1/800th of a second should do pretty well. Most people aren't running that fast, or jumping or something like that fast enough to where that won't capture the motion, or freeze the motion. Sorry. And I also put a f4 as your ISO, and what that does, it does two things. It gives you more light, so you can get 1/800th of a second, but it also blurs the background, which is kind of what you want to do if you want to single out somebody. Maybe somebody's dunking a basketball or something, and you want to single that person out, and so it'll blur the background more, so you're just highlighting that one person. And then you want to try to get a ISO, usually higher the ISO, you get the faster shutter speed you get. And when I was thinking of sports images, I was thinking usually they're taken inside of a gymnasium or something like that. So the ISO range I kind of gave you was 800 to 1200, depending on what your camera can shoot. Most cameras can definitely shoot to 1200 and much higher than that. But when you're in a gymnasium, it's obviously lower light, so you're going to need more light to come in. So you need a more sensitive sensor. So and that's kind of a easy way to base where you're going to start off at. Obviously, these settings aren't going to be a one and done situation. You definitely have to start out and test these settings before you start shooting and getting everything ready. So this is kind of just like a base of where you can go. And so for the next kind of example is night photography or night landscapes, and you definitely need a tripod for this, because most of the time night landscapes will require very long shutter speeds to allow more light in. So on the cheat sheet, I actually did 30 seconds as a shutter speed. And I even went to bulb mode. Bulb mode is actually where you go and as long as you hold the shutter speed or the shutter button down, the shutter will stay open so you can hold it open for 10 minutes if you wanted to, and it'll stay open. So 30 seconds to bulb is usually kind of what I try to start out with f7. I try to get around there, f7, f8. I try to get around there just because I want to get a little bit of depth of field in there. I don't want to bump it all the way down to f4 or f2.3 or something like that, or to 3.2. I don't want to do that. I want to try to get a little bit of depth of field, but not too much. And then if you want really crisp, clean night landscapes, because of it being dark, you're going to have to introduce noise. Try to keep your ISO lower to around 100, 200, 400, somewhere around there. And another one a lot of people really, really want to try to get is flowing water. That is usually usually done with a slower shutter speed, and the only bad part about that is if you go out during the day and it's a bright and sunny day, you're going to not be able to get the light to cut down as much because you need less light to come in the camera. So if you want to get really flowing water, you have to have a shutter speed of roughly around 3, 4, 5 seconds, somewhere around there. So your trick will be lowering your ISO as much as possible. So, if your camera goes to 100 and that's the lowest it can go to 100. And then you also want to bump up your aperture to close off and not let as much light in. So that would be going up to f/22, and then see what your camera gives you for a shutter speed. And so this happened recently where we were taking waterfall shots, and I couldn't get my shutter speed down lower or slower than 1.5 seconds. So the water that I was taking pictures of wasn't exactly as flowing as I'd like it to be, but that's as low as I can go without putting a bunch of filters on my camera. So those are 3 quick examples that you can get, and there's a bunch more on this cheat sheet. So like I said, for the exposure triangle cheat sheet, go to PictureMonk.com/exposure cheat sheet. And then for the camera settings cheat sheet that I was referring to here, you can actually go to PictureMonk.com/settings cheat sheet, and you can download both those there and just give it a look over. There's a little more information on there. Maybe your shots require tripods. Maybe you have to use the lowest available on certain settings, so that kind of thing. And you can also make little notes as well. So go ahead and check those out, and that's all for the In a Snap segment for this week. And this is Jordan for PictureMonk.com, and I will see you for the next episode of In a Snap.